So, welcome guys. Finally, I'm super excited to have you guys here with me. Like, I would not be able to do this without you guys. Finally, we all get to meet and finally do what we've been talking about doing forever. So, I'm Jerry.
Lala. And I'm Gillette.
Alright, and we are the Line of Africa Foundation. We are partners of a charity organization that is, the goal is to cause a social change. So we're trying to touch on topics that are sensitive. The three topics that we are focused on is xenophobia, which is racism among the same race. So it's like black people, hating on each other, which is recent in South Africa, where we had the South Africans and the Nigerians fighting. And we also want to talk about homophobia, which is a predominant issue in Africa due to the anti-LGBTQ laws that have been set up, and also mental health, because a lot of research has been done to show that like mental health is not even considered a disease in Africa. Like people cannot comfortable to walk into like places and talk about it. Like we have like, for example, a country in Ghana called West Africa, where like a UN poll shows that only 10% of the country like even acknowledges issues of mental health and actively seek help. So our goal is to talk about these sensitive topics, get other people talking about these sensitive topics with the idea of creating awareness, and hopefully get people to start thinking about solutions. Yeah.
So it's about to like bring awareness to people, that to let them know that it's not, it doesn't end that you have to like be isolated from people. You have to be able to speak out whatever you're going through. So we are here to listen to you. If there's if you have any contribution, if you have anything and any idea, then share with us.
Yes. You can find us on social media. Twitter is at Introducing Loaf. Facebook is Line of Africa Foundation, and Instagram is also Line of Africa Foundation, together without spaces. So feel free to follow us, subscribe, let us know based on these three topics, which is xenophobia, homophobia, and mental health. What it means to you, how it's affected you, what are your coping mechanisms, and how would you identify and what it is that what you're going through. Feel free to share it with us, and we will respond and let you know how best you can deal with it.
So today I'm just going to be asking you, what does mental health mean to you?
Try to be positive, try to have good family and friends around you, keep positive people around you. I know that I recently read that like Harvard did a study about, it was like a 70-year study about what makes life the best, like what makes it positive. And they said that it was very interesting. They said that keeping positive people around you is the most important thing you could do in your life. And I thought that was pretty incredible, because what they were explaining what it does in all countries is that you keep positive people around you, it lifts you up and makes you a positive person, even if you're not, even if you're down or something. But those people, keeping positive people around you, keeps you up. Now, I'm not saying you have to throw out all the negative people. I mean, that's like you have family and stuff that you can't really do that to. But there are some choices you can make in friends and other people around you. And sometimes, maybe you don't want those certain people around you, and maybe you can't really help them, so maybe you keep positive people around you. If you're good enough, maybe you could help those people to an extent. But I personally tend to keep a limited conversation with those types of people, limited dialogue, because for me, I'd rather have positive people around me that can lift me up, and I could lift them up, and we could all what's that saying, rising tide lifts all boats. I think I might have got that right. So, I mean, in my mind, keeping positive people around you, helping the ones that need help, that's a great thing. And if you could do that, that's wonderful. We're not all that great to do it. We're not all that qualified. But, sometimes just a smile and a nice word could be enough to someone for that day or for that second. So I think for me, to answer your question, that's what mental health is about for me. It's about just keeping those positive people around and keeping my mental health up by doing that.
What other coping mechanisms do you think you suggest to someone that's first step around positive people? But we're humans. Sometimes we get in our heads. What other coping mechanisms can you suggest?
Very important things is improving yourself, and they're not secret things. I think we all know them, but the hard part about it's one thing to know them, it's another to execute them. And I think that we all know them. Health, running, eating right. I'm not telling you any secrets. We know all these things, but what does all those things matter? Writing or poetry or art or going out and being social, going to clubs, blah 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 blah. We can go on and on and on. We know all these things, but really, what's the difference between all those things and the person that's not doing them? It's executing them. It's how do you get this person to do all those wonderful things that are out there? And the answer is, I think, is just one thing. You just do one little of those things once, and then all of a sudden you could do another thing the next day and another thing the next day, and it just builds on each other. So you find, though, you could, if you want to help someone, maybe you just find that one thing to help them do that one tiny thing that day. It might be running down the driveway and running back and saying, oh, I ran today, and they feel good. And then the next day they run down the block, and then they run a block. And then the next day they run half a mile, and they feel amazing. And then everything can roll from there. But sometimes when you're down, it takes a very small thing, and then bam, it can increase. So for me to help someone, or for me to do that, I'll sometimes tell someone, just do one little small thing that you might be interested in, even if you don't want to. Do it anyway, And maybe your brain tends to follow. You ever hear like fake it to make it?
Yes.
So do the things that a positive person does, and maybe your brain will follow and change into those things.
Asking you, do you know someone, or have you yourself also encountered anything related to like mental health? It could be depression, it could be anxiety. It doesn't have to be something complicated or diagnosed, because everybody in New York at some point definitely has gone through anxiety or depression.
Well, actually, I'm a director of agency, not-for-profit NGO called Jericho Road Inc. And we help abused women and children, and we have an international program. So we deal with people that deal with anxiety attacks, depression all the time. And depression is not just has to do with what happened to them, but it also has to do with what's in the body. So you have what you call neurotransmitters. So depression people, they have a high level of cortisol in the body and a low level of neoadrenaline, which is the adrenaline, and they have a low level of serotonin in the body. Serotonin is the happy drug, so they have to increase their levels of serotonin in order to get to a level where that they can feel better. So actually, depression and mental health all has to do with the body and how you have to deal with your neurotransmitters.
Thank you very much. That's very enlightening.
That's very, very
for somebody
good.
who doesn't even know anything about the brain and how it works. And give a good and detailed.
Well, I study the brain. I could break down the whole parts of the brain if you want to. You got two parts. The two parts is the two lobes, the left and the right. The left is the logic, and the right is where you have the imagination. The right takes time to be developed, and the left is what we use, and the left is what we call the gate guard, and it's actually, it helps us to make logical conditions. And you find that people who are savants, their left brain is damaged, and their right brain, which is the creative part of the mind, is heightened, and those are what you call the geniuses, and they can't be socially interreactive with people, but they are very intelligent. That's what you call savants. I mean, in order to do my thing, I had to study each part of the brain. So I definitely know the brain.
So outside of medication, what other ways can one, enhance their mental health? What other ways
well, you have Ritalin, you have Prozac. All these things are meant to help with attention deficit disorder and people who are in those type of things. But what happens is when you stop taking it, it leaves you dependent on the drug, and people end up being in docile positions, or they don't feel comfortable anymore. So you try to recommend natural processing ways of how to deal with these type of issues rather than actually taking medication.
For example.
Okay, so they have different type of programs. All right, so if you're looking for counseling, you take Rational Behavioral Therapy by Marshall Lynn. You could take Cognitive Behavioral Therapy discovered by Aaron Beck, which helps deal with the positions of the now. A lot of things is that trauma has to deal with the past. And so trauma is basically how I put it. Trauma and depression is you're reliving the moments that got you into the position of you feeling depressed. So you're constantly living not in your present, you're living in what happened to you. All right? In order for us to live in the present, we have to be able to let go of the past.
Yeah.
But stop thinking about the past. Think about now. Okay, yes, it has happened. It has happened. There's nothing you can do about it. You're not going to bring it back. You're not going to change it. It has happened. So what's the way forward? So many times, like he was saying, we have to learn to forgive ourselves. We don't forgive ourselves. Oh, why he dumped me was because I wasn't good enough. Why I'm going through this is because I was born poor. Maybe I'm also from a rich home. I didn't even maybe I come from Trump family or whatever family.
Ultimately, you just have to love yourself, because the kind of
Thank
love we
you.
actually search for in people is a love that we should be giving to
Yes.
ourselves. Because if you love yourself the way you want someone else to love you, the way they would love you, it would, if they are not on the same frequency of how you love yourself, you would not accept anything lower than that.
Yeah, but that's what I always ask people, that when somebody is telling you about I love you ask them, how much do you love yourself? Because you can't give what you don't have.
Yes.
You can't say you love me when you don't
the
love
spot.
yourself.
Yes.
So you must have to, first of all, how do you treat
Down with
yourself?
your head.
Yes.
Like there's some
Are you
people I was,
patient with yourself?
Oh.
Are you kind with yourself? Do
Oh.
you forgive yourself?
Oh.
Do you persevere with yourself?
you don't even
when
enjoy
trying
yourself,
times?
because there's some
Do you
people
endure?
there are some people that they can't even buy things for themselves.
Yeah.
They rather say like family, friends. What have you ever like one day my guy used to say, pay yourself first. Have you ever paid yourself first? Go to the mall, buy something for yourself that costs more than what you give to somebody.
Exactly.
So if you can't be able to do all these things for yourself, my friend, you're not gonna do that.
Yeah.
So for you,
And-
if you're depressed and you're going through this, you have to learn to love yourself.
Exactly.
Yes, loving yourself is key.
And while we're still on it, and there's some people, especially those in Africa, that they don't even know what the, how should I put this? I do not want to call it symptoms. What are the things that they should look for in themselves to be able to be like, oh, okay, I think I'm going through depression, or I'm going through anxiety. How do I now correct? If you don't know there's something wrong with you, how do you're not going to be able to fix it.
Africa, even when we look at the word Africa, that's not even the true name of Africa itself. The true name of Africa is either called Kemet or Alkabale. Africa was named after after a Roman general who conquered Hannibal. Africa was before all of this. Africa is the set of the creation. The mental stability and the mental fortitude of the nation was created by in that region of Africa, all right? And the highest mathematics and the highest form of intelligence, there's a tribe in Africa called Dogons. In the Dogon cave, they mapped out the whole solar system without a telescope, right? And they mapped out the DNA coding that we took so long to figure out. The DNA coding is in their cave, right? This is the Dogon tribe. And so when you look at Africa, Africa has a lot of highly intellectual beings in Africa, all right? Without a doubt. If you go into the temple of what they call Luxor, or we call it Waset, they have the brain mapped out in the temple. Like they built each part tells a part of the brain, all right?
You gotta go there, man.
So-
Put it on the bucket list.
So people just don't understand how rich Africa is with knowledge. Okay, now when you talk about depression, the only perceived depression they have is what the Western world is putting on them. Those people were so advanced in knowledge and so on stuff that we still studying from them. A matter of fact, Africa has so much resources that they were able to supply the modern world today that was in the Dark Ages. The only reason why they got out the Dark Ages was because of Africa and the resources in Africa. Okay, so when you talk about that, you're talking about a highly set of intellectual people who is not given the credit for what they did for the world.
True.
All right. Now, with that being said, you know, we could be in a place, and because you don't know that you're in a place of where you're at, you don't know your potential, you could feel that you're not on a frequency of a higher level.
Yes.
Understand what I'm saying? Because you didn't understand who you are.
Yes.
Right? But once you understand who you are, all you have to do is manifest your potential within inside of you. Value is created from within inside.
Yes.
The only reason that they're depressed is because they didn't understand who they was.
Yes.
Understand what I'm saying? And now, right, once they begin to walk in and they understand who they are, that's all they need. I need to understand who I am. You don't even need to help them. Once they understand that, because everything that they need is right there.
Yeah. Yes.
We have to create a collective consciousness, right, that promotes ourselves, right, and stop putting down ourselves.
Yes.
You understand what I'm saying? So that's why that's what I had to. That's why I said when you said Africa, no, Africa, you got to understand. Africa was the Mecca. It is the Mecca of a lot of things. You talk about medical science there. You talk about Hippocrates, but Hippocrates studied in Egypt, right?
Yeah.
And the first person on record that actually did a surgery is called Imhotep, right? And that's at the Saqqara, and the pharaoh name was Zosa. Like, I mean, I study this all day.
For Egypt, there's this rumor that the pyramids was actually created to create wireless electricity.
Okay, so here what happened. The pyramids, right, and the stuff, the way it's built. You know, the Great Pyramid is built in the center of the earth.
Yes.
Right? And it's built according to the coordinates of the equators, which is 7,926, which is the diameter of the earth, which is the measurement of the equator on each side, right? So you know it was highly intellectual beings that understood the dimensions of the earth.
Yeah.
That's right, that actually built the pyramid. All right.
Which is close to the Nile, and the Nile was supposed to supply
The Nile follows the Milky Way, and it follows the stars on the Milky Way. All right. So
we're supposed to tap like hydropower, which is supposed to go
tap in hydropower, right? So that's what it was. It was designed. It's all spiritual. It's all
to the receivers to produce wireless electricity.
It's all spiritual.
I'm only saying this to say that we do know that Africa has everything. They started even doing things way before the Western did, but it's like they've been left behind due to so many different issues. You know,
well, they was left behind because they was programmed to believe that they was inferior to people that they was inferior to.
How do we change this? How do we take a run around? Yeah. How do we
okay, so
it's therapy, or
it starts with a collective consciousness. You know, the first step to a million steps is making the first step, right? Okay. The first step is getting people together with a collective consciousness that understands who they are, and we call what they call awaken, or what they call enlighten, and start enlightening the people that are around them, and creating a movement. Right? You can't want to see something that's happening and then leave and go sit down in your house and do nothing.
Yeah.
You are just as bad as the people that are doing it.
That's exactly what Loaf is about. We're trying to educate people. We're trying to inform people and trying to cause a social change. Right. We're trying to get people to steer into the direction of loving each other as themselves, to reduce xenophobia. We're trying to get people loving each other, all men, to reduce homophobia, and hopefully we can get them to love themselves to help with the mental health issues. Yeah.
Right. So that's what it is. So it starts one step at a time. It starts building and creating an environment of learning. Yes. Right? Because anytime you know who you are, nobody can tell you who you are. Yes. The only reason that you allow yourself to be abused is because you don't have your identity. Well, anytime I'm able to assault your identity, you'll accept whatever I tell you because you have none.
guys, then we learned so many things today, and it just makes us so exciting to know that we have a lot to give back to you guys, and we are so willing to learn from you because nobody is an island. We don't know everything. Like the people we interviewed today taught me so many things that I didn't even know, and I can't wait to learn a lot. I want to learn so many things from you guys.
Yeah, I'm gonna hear from you.
So,
Wanna hear from you. Your own view too.
Subscribe
So you're gonna
too.
subscribe and let us know what you think.
Yes, please.
You know?
Subscribe onto any of our social media platforms and find us and tell us what you think about mental health.